Every morning I rose with the sun. Then I shuffled to my brother's room and woke him up. I went through our backyard, opened the squeaky door, trotted down the steps to the river, and squatted by the clear, cool water to check my reflection. I splashed my face with water and wiped it with my sleeves. 6 hours of sleep every day. I needed a lot of cold water to keep my eyes open. It was already late April. The smell of summer was pungent everywhere. Our backyard was a colorful garden with red roses, yellow gagi blossoms, and white lilies. Mom had planted some lima beans, which had flourished in the most imaginative way, and now crawled overhead along the wood frames of the doors and windows. I found a spot beneath the thick leaves, away from the scorching sun, placed my favorite bamboo chair there, and munched on some bean pods as the gentle breeze ruffled my hair. I started by tackling political studies, the most boring of the 5 subjects required in the big exam. It was all about the twisted philosophy of the Communist Party. Some of the theories were so involved, they sounded like sophistry at best, and that was what they were. It was like a carpet cleaning salesman raving about this great revolution taking place in the carpet cleaning industry, when actually none existed. And the machine he was trying to sell you wasn't one bit as good as what he claimed. It was tedious self-promotion mixed with a little bit of lying. Many times I wanted to throw the book into the river. What was this? Marxism combined with Mao's superior thoughts? It was simply some foreign garbage stir-fried with local flavor until it became a dish called communism, Chinese style. Mugu gai pan with ketchup. Some of the questions and explanations given were so far-fetched, I felt like spitting. Like why in the beginning of the revolution Mao had ordered his armies into the countryside instead of starting a revolt in the big city. The book said Mao was applying Marxism to China's unique circumstances. That was bull. Mao was just running for his life. He hadn't even had time to wipe his ass. The nationalist army was after his head, and he'd had to flee into the woods. There had been no Marxism in his mind at the time. I almost puked as I read the whole chapter talking about the virtue of Mao's one-liner, "True knowledge comes from practice." Yeah, right. Well, he'd had plenty of practice, starting with dumping his ugly country bumpkin first wife and crawling into bed with a chic Shanghai actress, while his army was chewing tree roots and getting their butts frozen in northern Shanghai, a hiding spot in which they were eventually able to revive. But reality was reality. Political studies stayed, accounting for 1/5 of the exam's total 500 points. I swallowed the sawdust and tried to keep my sentiments to a minimum. After 3 months of intensive work, Chen was making amazing headway. I fed him all that I had and gave him my best guidance. He didn't need much help. Neither did he need any motivational pep talk. While we studied, our 3 sisters toiled under the sun, taking over the workload for my brother. Each day, they came back sweaty and exhausted. My brother and I would come to the door to greet and thank them. They would just smile and ask us how much we had studied that day. We would tell them, and they would be happy for us. There was such hope and caring in their eyes. Brother Chen couldn't wait to jump back into farming as soon as the tests were over. He couldn't stand the thought that someone else was bearing his load for him. He knew how grueling the summer heat was, how sore your back could get, and that no matter how calloused your hands were, cutting the rice with the ancient blunt sickles gave you raw open blisters every year. It was life at Yellowstone we were trying to escape from. After a light breakfast, 3 bowls of rice porridge for Jen and 2 for me, we studied geology and history together at a long table in the living room, facing the lush garden. We drew history charts on our makeshift blackboard, and more were spread all over the floor. We examined every detail of China's long history and pored over every exotic city in the world. Jen sometimes offered me a cigarette during our 5-minute afternoon break as we talked about our dreams and desires. His were practical and comfortable, while mine were whimsical and somewhat far-fetched. He wanted to go to a solid college with a good economics department near home, become a manager of a company, marry a pretty girl with a solid temperament, and raise a family. I wanted to go to Beijing, the pearl of China, which was a 50-hour train ride from home, and study English. From there, the sky was the limit. Mom would bring in our lunches, rice with some meat soup. I knew that we didn't have any money, so I asked Mom where the money to buy the meat came from. She was quiet for a bit, then said we needed nutrition to study, that I was not to worry, just to continue the good work. I knew that our family was probably piling up loans just to feed our 2 non-performing mouths. Jen and I talked, and we decided to tell Mom to stop doing it. It was getting a little too luxurious for us. We just wanted simple soup made with vegetables from our garden and a lot of rice. April was when the green couldn't meet the yellow, the time right before harvest when the food from the last harvest was about to run out. And we didn't know where Mom got all that long grain white rice. By then, we should have been eating just cheap yams 3 times a day, but that was something we didn't want to concern ourselves about at the moment. I decided a lot of time could be saved by not going to school anymore. Everything was in the books. By April, most of the real teaching had been accomplished. Jen and I stopped talking about dreams and instead tested each other on everything. The more detailed, the better. We became so involved that when we took a bathroom break at the same time, we still tested each other through the thin partition separating our stalls. Every minute counted. Soon we began to lengthen our days by 2 hours, adding an hour before sunrise and an hour in the evening. We lived on 4 hours of sleep. Our appetites diminished. Dad was concerned and gave us a brief lecture. We shrugged it off. The exam was only a couple weeks away. What more harm could such a short time do? When Jen was tired, he stared into the empty space before him, deep in thought. His cheeks were sunken, his face was wan, and he'd grown an unruly beard. Each time I took my eyes off my book and stole a glance at him, my heart went out to him. He was a man consumed by his quest for the only way out of this hellhole. He wanted only to give it one try. If he failed, he was going to burn those books and be a farmer forever. Each minute of his time was precious. I prayed silently for us every night before going to sleep, even on my most exhausting days. We smiled and encouraged each other. I had never felt closer to Jen, nor he to me. We were a couple of marathon runners, each taking inspiration from the other. We kept saying to each other that yes, we were nearing the finish line. Hurry, hurry, or it would be forever too late. Immediately after the Cultural Revolution ended, going to college suddenly became the rage. The radio talked about young heroes who had overcome severe difficulties and made it to prestigious colleges. Heroism, glamour, money, and cushy jobs awaited those who crossed the threshold. A college education was money in the bank, and getting there was as rare as hitting all 6 numbers in the lottery. In China, from the moment you were admitted into a college, no matter how low level it was, your life would be totally taken care of by the government. There was no tuition to pay. They gave you the train ticket, a food stipend of 36 zhen, about 33 pounds, of rice a month, a bed, all the books you needed, and a guaranteed job, a prestigious white-collar job. It was the best college deal in the whole world. I drew a flag in red ink on the calendar for each of the 3 examination days in July. Each day, as I looked at the flags, I felt a lump in my throat. My blood would begin to boil, my heart would race, and my exhaustion would vanish as my energy returned. I would rush back to my books and read for a few more hours. Finally, the big exam was only 10 days away. Chen began to have difficulty sleeping. No matter how early he got up and how hard he studied, he still couldn't find peace. He would stare at the top of the mosquito net and listen to the mosquitoes hum their war songs. Dad had to find some sleeping pills to help calm him down. There were 3 times when Chen would simply sit quietly, staring at his book, his eyes unmoving, thinking and thinking. I knew the pressure he was feeling. He began to claim he couldn't remember anything. I made him some tea and told him that we were not going to waste all the work we'd done. We hadn't slept enough, had seen no friends, and had hardly been outside the house in weeks. Finally, I tested him on a few tough questions, and he answered them beautifully. I slapped him on the back, and he returned to his studies. At this point, we were bound together like a couple of soldiers in battle. My words meant more to him than anyone else's. In the back of my own mind, however, there was always the fear of opening the exam paper and not knowing any of the answers. I had nightmares about my mind going blank. I woke up, sweating and shaking.